Welcome to another episode of Black Belts and Boardrooms. Today is a very special day and a very special episode. Uh, Part of the reason why it's special is because we are recording the last episode of season one, and I couldn't be more delighted about the guest we have today. So without further ado, Renard, please introduce us to our special guest.
This is actually, yeah, this is truly special. This is someone who is very special to us, someone who has helped change our lives this year. Um, Actually, if we didn't meet Tom, me and Amir would have never met, and Black Belts and Boardrooms wouldn't even exist right now. So today we have Tom Cox, executive coach, owner of Vertical Motion, which we both are a part of, author. The list goes on and on. Tom, thank you for joining us for our final episode of the season.
It's a pleasure to be here with two of my favorite people that I've met through Vertical Motion.
Man, we are so excited to have you. And we always start off, we always want to kick off, if you could, for our audience, our people who's listening, could you give us your origin story?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in Baltimore, joined the Army, went to University of Maryland to study nuclear engineering, couldn't afford college, dropped out, went full-time Army as a satellite engineer. Spent a couple years at the NSA during 9/11. I basically put interesting telephones in interesting places. Worked in the defense industry for another 10 years, mostly in satellite communications. Built a venture-backed startup to 54 employees, several $1 million of investment, millions of dollars of revenue and profit and all of the things. That company existed for 15 years before it was acquired. Second startup that I did was a more socially based startup. Was all about helping refugees stay connected as they were migrating north into Europe from Syria. That one didn't work out so well, and so I'd say that I'm 1 for 1 with a base hit, or 1 for 2 with a base hit in startups, not counting this one. And then in 2022, it was August of 2022, I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. And when I got to the emergency room, the head of oncology met me there. And she came into our room about an hour later and said, "You have acute myeloid leukemia, may not be treatable for you." And I asked, how much time do I have? And she said 6 weeks. And so I spent the first night in that hospital. I was in some like weird ethereal space that wasn't quite the ER, wasn't quite the floor. It was just this weird, they called hotel ER or whatever. And I was in this giant room all by myself. And I literally was just there with my thoughts. And it's like, okay, I guess that's it. Did I live a good life? Was I a good father? Was I a good husband? And generally speaking, I felt like, yeah, I could have been better, but I was good at those things. But I really regretted not taking action on more things in life. Like one of the things that I always wanted to do is be a coach. And in 2014, I built everything out, but I just didn't take action. And there I was sitting in the hospital in 2022 thinking like, I wish I had done that. A week later, as the treatment is kicking off, we get news from the genetic tests that I have a rare genetic mutation that actually would save my life. And, spoiler alert, here I am. 3 years later, cancer free. I was declared completely in remission in February of 23, and I didn't waste my second chance. I quit the job that I was doing as the number 2 guy in a publicly traded company and decided to lean fully into coaching. And I specifically wanted to teach leadership. And so and specifically, I wanted to teach leadership to good people. I like to work with authentic, empathetic, and audacious people because I think there's a lot of good people out there who are just missing 1 or 2 things to become excellent leaders. And we have to put more of those in place of the toxic, narcissistic people who step on everyone around them to move up. So here we are 3 years later, still living that mission and that dream. And now I live in Colorado, which is the place I've always wanted to live. And so it's like life is short, go do the things you want to do. And that's what the last 3 years of my life has been like.
Yeah, that is, man, it's great to see how what you wanted to do, you were able to do. Now vertical motion is around. If you could give us a background of year one of vertical motion. How was that? Just saying, hey, I've built all these other companies, but now I'm gonna go into coaching. And how was year one for you?
Yeah, it was like the anti-business. The way that I had built businesses in the past and the kinds of companies that I'd worked for, it was all about scale. It was take something and 100 exit. And, so everything that I thought about in all those businesses, how much venture can I get to pour into this massive thing? This business was exactly the opposite. It was I didn't have a website for the first 3 months of the business. Like I didn't even care I bought a $20 logo off of some like random website for vertical motion. I chose the name because I happened to own vertical motion's Facebook group, which I wound up never even using. And so it was like, I didn't care about the branding. I didn't care about all the things that everyone thinks that you care about. I wanted to find people who needed my help in becoming a good leader. And specifically, I was looking for mid-career leaders who wanted to become executives, trying to move from director to VP primarily. And I just went out on LinkedIn and started typing out, hey, anyone in my network looking to move up, I'd love to help you. Uh, Two people that used to work with me at different times in my career reached out and said, yeah, I'm stuck at director and trying to get to VP. I signed both of them as clients and I just one-on-one coached them and they both became vice presidents within about 3 months. And so I was like, okay, I think there's something to this. And like, so, and I was still working at that other company. When I recovered from leukemia, I went back to work for that other company, but like my heart was not in it. I had There was this funny moment, Renard, where the week before I went back to my full-time job, I was sitting there like, I need to reintegrate myself. And so I literally went to a cabin and sat there all my own in this cabin with a bunch of books and was like, how do I take this new expansive version of myself that feels like life is short, go do the thing, and reconcile that with the career that I had built, which was more narrow and didn't allow for any creativity like that.
Mm.
And I sat there for a week trying to figure that out and I couldn't. And I gave up and I decided, well, I'll just go back to work. And the first day that I was back at work, I'm like, this is not going to work. I knew it wouldn't. So I think it was like 3 weeks later, I resigned and said, I'm going to go do this coaching thing. I don't know if I'm going to bankrupt myself or not, but it was just like, I was really in a mode of life is short, just get it done. And I'm appreciative of that mindset because like we can get really anxious and nervous we have so much to lose. Sitting there in that hospital bed, it was like losing those things aren't important. Losing the opportunity to do something impactful, meaningful that will not only change your life, but change the lives of others. Like the fact that we're having this conversation, the two of you are here doing this is indicative of I made the right choice to lean into doing something audacious, doing something that was probably not advised for someone who was 2 months out of, chemo. And I didn't care. I knew that this was my life passion. This was my life purpose. We made it work. And, with the help of Nicole and several others over the course of the first year, we did almost $1 million in business and transformed, dozens of people in that first year and just been moving upwards ever since.
Man, that's great. I have to say, and I know Amir will have his own story of how I got connected with vertical motion. I always say that my phone was listening to me one day. All of a sudden, Tom popped up on my Instagram, and I was like, man, I said this is interesting, and I was at that point of, man, I feel stuck. I'm not sure how to keep moving. There's this unknown, and you popped up in my Instagram. I thought the videos were great. I remember you reached out to me, and I was still skeptical because I was like, I don't know. And talked to you for a little while. You looked at my resume, And then I think I joined the next day after I proposed to my fiance because I told him, I said, I can't do it that day. I said, I got to propose to my fiance. Let me do that first, and then I'll join right after. So the following day I joined. I'm sure Tom and everybody else thought like, nah, he's found a way to get out of it. He's not gonna join. But I talked to her and she even told me, she was like, it's something you need to do. She said, looks like it's something you need to do. Go ahead and do it. So it was one of the best decisions that I made this year, definitely. And I owe that a little bit to my wife who gave a thumbs up to it. And it's changed my life. I know it's changed Amir's as well. So I know it's early, but I will say thank you, Tom, for creating vertical motion, for being our executive coach. It's just changed our lives completely.
Yeah, I couldn't agree
Thank
with
you.
you more. So, Tom, on that same note, I'll say a few words too. For me, I don't know if my phone was listening to me, unlike Renard, because I think that's just a little creepy. But I know it happens. I know that as a technologist, it happens. But for me, it was really just learning from other coaches that I've had in the past. And I think I shared this with you when you and I met back in February of this year. And I said I just knew I needed structure. And I was just not getting that from the other coaches that I had. And not that they were not good, they were great people. But in that journey, I recognized that for me to get to a place where I can say to myself confidently, I'm a better leader today, is that structure and just getting that recognition. And then, as fate would have it, your ad comes up on Instagram and I'm talking to you and I'm like, you know what? I'm talking to my wife and I'm saying, hey, there's this guy named Tom and I'm really enamored because whatever he's saying, the words are like music to my ears, are resonating because you were speaking the things that I was missing. And for me, it happened to be Valentine's Day. Not that, that has any significant other than the date because it's easy to remember. But that was when I said, you know what, I got to pull the trigger and talk to Tom. And one thing I will say, and this was very different from all the other coaching experiences that I've had, is that, to your point that you make, empathetic leaders. You put me through an interview process, and I know you don't do this. You do this for everybody because you want to make sure as a leader that you are living the example to say, I'm curating this community with a very specific type of people. And these are the people that I want to help. So on that, I want to ask you a question because not all of us have that growth mindset. And I think you bring that in spades to your clients. And I feel like you're more of a friend now than a coach. How would you say to those who have never experienced coaching before that what is that trigger? How would you communicate that to folks listening?
Yeah, I think that, working with a coach, finding the right coach is a little bit like finding the right therapist. It's a little bit like finding the right accountant. It's, in anything in life, these kinds of relationships, the two people have to feel a connection to one another. And my personality type, Myers-Briggs, ENFJ. And what I'm really good at is seeing the very best in people. What I'm not good at is seeing the worst in people. And so I take most people as face value. When they show up a certain way, I assume that's who they are. As soon as I see a mask slip, I never interact with that person again if I can avoid it. Right. And so, and I have thrown two people out of this community because I saw a mask slip in both of them. I gave them their money back and said, this is not the place for you. Because quite honestly, I'm at a point now in my life where I don't want to work with people I don't like. And I can curate a community. There's 250 people in this community. I like every single one of them, right? Like every single person in this community is an authentic, empathetic, and audacious person. And I think that when you're trying to figure out who's going to help you move forward in your life, you have to find your tribe. You have to find someone who knows how to see the very best in you and pull the very best in you out, right? But you have to trust that person to do that because I ask you to do things that are uncomfortable, that are out because your growth is outside of comfort, right? And so you have to have an implicit level of trust in me. I have to have an implicit level of trust in you that you're going to do the thing. right? There's like two types of people that I run into in this whole coaching world. I've talked to like 2,000 people now, 150,000 people on Instagram, and 2,000 one-on-one conversations, right? And there's two types of people. They fall into two categories. There's information gatherers and action takers. And this program is expensive and it is hard to get into it on purpose, because if you are willing and able to get past, you know, the application and the questions and the grill, you're able to get past that, and then you make the investment in yourself, I know you will take action, right? And now listen, there's people who have paid me a lot of money and got almost nothing out of it because they just, you know, like coaching needs three things to be successful: structure, discipline, and accountability. Structure is the program, it's the course, it's the framework, it's the things that you were looking for, Amir, specifically, right? Accountability is what the coaches provide in the form of checklists and calls and check-ins and, you know, checkpoints and all the things that we do there. The discipline has to come from the client. We can't make you do the things that you need to do. And so, like, we try very hard to make sure that we're only working with people who will take action. And I like being that selective, because if you look around the community, there's a lot of people who will go to war for each other in here.
Yeah, I can attest to that for sure. And like Renard said, Renard and I would never have met had this not been the community that you had built. And immediately I can tell you, every person I've met in the community so far, I just immediately resonated with. Now, maybe that's because we're similar personality types. I don't know the science behind it. But the first meeting I had with Renard, immediately, like, hey, you want to do a podcast? Sure. And here we are, you know?
Action takers, right? Now, I'll tell you something just really quickly about psychology. I have really dove in deep into psychometrics over the last 3 years. And specifically in Myers-Briggs, there's 16 personality types, but they're not an equal distribution in society. There are 4 personality types. The bottom 4 make up less than 6% of society. Those 4 personality types make up more than 60% of our community. And those 4 personality types specifically are big picture thinkers who want to build great things, and they have the ability to put structure and discipline to what they do, right? They crave that. And so like those two things are elements in people who have the most success, not just in a program like this, but in anything that they want to apply themselves towards. So the fact that the two of you said, hey, you want to do a podcast? Yeah, sure. And you actually did it. And here we are at the end of season 1 already. That says a lot. It says that you're both action takers and you guys are figuring this out. You got a great following now. Like this is a real thing. This is pretty cool. And it's because you each selected yourself into this community, and you're the kinds of people who are looking for your tribe. And here you are, the two of you. It's amazing.
Thank you, Tom. So, I want to touch on your book as well, because I think your book is a great entry point in the philosophies that you share with all of us. Um, for the folks who may not be familiar with your book right now, I know you say that the content's the easy part, but there's magic inside that book. And I'm very intentional about using that word. I got the privilege of actually talking to you before your book came out. But if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about the book and why did you choose to write the book after you created the program?
Yeah, great question. So, I had always wanted to be an author, but I didn't know what I would write. And I never, I just never did it. I was an information gatherer when it came to those kinds of things myself. And one day I said to myself, I want to write a book. And I said it out loud. And it was like, okay, I have to write a book. Because like I was still in this mindset of like, I don't want to regret not doing something. Right. So I figured it out. I went to another cabin and spent a week and wrote the outline and then launched the book. The book is called The Executive Career Handbook. And it's basically a step-by-step guide for what you need to know in order to become an executive. The first third of the book is all about just some really core mindset stuff, right? And don't like dismiss mindset, because listen, I can teach people all of the strategies and tactics in the world, but if they don't have the right mindset to use them, they're not going to. Now, I teach someone the right mindset to be an executive leader, they'll go find the strategies and tactics themselves. So the first third of the book is getting you in the right state of mind. Like I talk about the concept of becoming the CEO of You Inc., right? Take executive ownership for yourself, right? The second half of the book, or the second third of the book, is really a deep dive into the structure of the program that I run here at Vertical Motion. But it's called the Whole Executive Framework, and it's everything you need to know to be an executive. Go do those things, and you will get there. And then the third part is basically like, okay, let's get started. Step 1, step 2. So the first few steps of what we teach in the program is in the third part of the book. And then from there, if you want more help, that was the idea, was that basically the book would do the kind of marketing that, like at the time I was mostly focused on short form content on Instagram and a little bit on YouTube. And I just like, I don't know if I'm reaching everyone that I could. And I felt like the book would do that. But the real reason, Amir, is that I knew the book would outlive me. And I think the values in that book would stand the test of time. I think some of the tactics won't, but the framework and the mindset stuff, I think, will. And so it's a little bit of a sense of legacy, but it really is meant to be, let me give you this. It's $10, right? Go read this. And if by the end of this book you think I'm full of it, cool. But if you think this will help you, you know what to do.
Your book's fantastic. Yeah.
I'm gonna agree with that. I agree. We have been through the course and we read the book, so we we did both. We did both, and even for me, I added that book to the book club at work. That became one of our books for my team to read, to understand that, and I have seen my team step up and get some soft skills, what I like to call it, because of that book. One of one of the big things that you teach us a lot, and it's around branding. You have people who are already at the executive level, you go to their page, it's not that much activity. Why is branding so important for your career?
So here we are going into 2026, and the entire career economy, the job market, especially here in North America and specifically the United States, is very different than it was even 12 months ago. And I've actually had to update my content and the course material because of it. AI, if you don't understand how to leverage AI, you're not going to get the job. And I don't mean like how to use a GPT LLM, for like, how do I wash my dishes the right way? I'm talking about like using it to understand real business intelligence, right? How to apply it to be a force multiplier, not to replace your force, but to augment and, 10x your workforce, right? Those things are important nowadays, right? But more important than that, brand, which is basically a fancy word for what people say about you when you're not in the room, right? Brand is incredibly important, both internally and externally. And what I mean by that is that your promotion inside of an organization that you work for is decided by people in a room that you are not in, right? And like, we actually have this tool called I forgot the name of the tool, but it's basically a chart, an influencer chart. And it basically shows you who influences your promotion, right? And so there's a key decision maker, which is not your boss, by the way. There's an approver who's above the key decision maker, and there are influencers from all angles. And if you don't know who those people are, what level of influence, or whether they're positive or negative, then you have no idea. It's a crapshoot whether you get promoted or not, right? So your brand is your way of letting those people inside the organization know who you are, what you stand for, what you're capable of, right? People watch what you put on LinkedIn internally, right? When you post things, people inside the company, they may not comment on it, they may not like it or heart it or whatever, but they'll come up to you and say, "Hey, that was a really good piece you wrote about this thing," right? Or how come you're writing on LinkedIn so much all of a sudden, right? We have a whole process for, weaving that in so that it doesn't trigger HR alarms. But the point is that like you have the ability to impact your internal brand by doing things externally. More importantly, more importantly, the reality is that you're not competing against other people's resumes. When you submit a position description, or you see a position description and you apply to a job, it's not your resume that gets you the job. It's your relationships, right? And relationships can be two-way, but they can be one-way as well. Each of you found me, right? And then I created a two-way relationship with you, right? Well, that works for your career. And now in 2026, it's really the only thing that's working. You see a job on a job board like LinkedIn, you see, senior director of something or vice president of this. By the time you see it, there's 1,000 applications for it. It's probably the third or fourth round that they've posted that job, right? There's probably somebody on the inside that they actually have identified for that role. And it's because they know, like, and trust that person. For you to compete with that, you're not competing against resumes, you're competing against relationships. And so you have to build a relationship with the hiring manager and executive recruiter. And so the way you do that is you make them know, like, and trust you. And the way to do that is to put yourself out there. Now, think about for example, like if you go on Amazon and you want to buy a broom, you just type in broom. And the first two results, the first one is like it just says broom, right? And there's like no description other than it sweeps. And there's like 19, 19 reviews on it, and they're all like, meh, it's a broom, for the exact same price, right next to that broom is the Broomomatic 5000. It's got 96,000 reviews. There's videos on people using it. It's become a viral meme thing. And it's like this amazing broom that does all this stuff, and everyone's talking about it. And they're the same price. Which broom are you going to buy? Right? Well, go take a look at your LinkedIn profile. Right? You got no picture behind your, no banner. There's your job title is, like if you look at your LinkedIn from the eyes of a recruiter, right? And I'm like, okay, well, there's nothing here, so I'm just going to click away, right? If that's you, then you have some work to do on building your brand, because at the end of the day, your brand is what builds your business funnel, right? Your opportunity funnel, with whether it's, corporate roles or entrepreneurship opportunities or whatever, right? That all comes from the ability to like get people to know, like, and trust you in a way. This podcast is a beautiful example of how you get people to know, like, and trust you. And for those of you who are watching or listening to this podcast right now, think about this. You have been paying attention to these two gentlemen for weeks, months. You know them. You're back because you like them. And now you're starting to trust them. And that's the kind of relationship that you have to build for yourself in order to be seen as the solution to somebody's problem, which is the only thing people hire.
Man, that is so important. I started telling people that all the time. I was like, people have to get to know you before they even meet you now. And that's where your branding comes from. Like you said, people start speaking about you in rooms that you're not in, and it all comes from your branding and building those relationships. And it was something that I did not do for years. I always joke around and say when I started, I was just worrying about the work and nothing else. And now, building relationships, I understand the power of just building authentic relationships with each other. If you're trying to have business with each other, that'll come organically after that. Once you build, like you said, that trust and that authenticity with each other. So it is so important. One of the things I wanna delve into is especially around introverts. So
Mm.
we've had many conversations about that. Some people who are introverted don't think they can be leaders. I really want you, if you could, delve into that part about leaders that are introverts.
some of the best executives in the world are introverts. Tim Cook from Apple is an introvert, as an example. Introverts, the thing about there's really two misnomers here. One is introverts are people who are energized and recharged by being alone, right? People who are shy and don't really want to put themselves out there. There's a couple reasons why they feel that way, but there are a lot of people who have no interest in, like, when I talk about these things, I watch the introverts on the calls get all like squirmy and uncomfortable because, like, oh, you're gonna make me network, like, like, well, yes, I am. I actually created a course, Renard, called Thought Leadership for Introverts. And it's literally like a step by step, okay, you're an introvert. Here's the first thing you do. And by the way, the first thing you do is you go on LinkedIn, you join a group in the industry that you want to be in, and you comment on a post. And just do that once a day, every day for 5 days a week for a couple of weeks. So it's like zero weight in pool kind of thing. But like, yeah, I get it. At the end of the day, though, introverts can build deep and powerful relationships. Shy people, they may not have thousands of friends, but they have very close friends. And building the relationships, like, at the end of the day, humans are relational, right? We all have to find our own tribe. And at the end of the day, we're not going to invite somebody into the tribe that we don't trust, right? That's hardwired into us. Thank you, from 70,000 years ago during the last ice age or whatever, right? Like, we learned to band together. And so, like, people won't invite you in unless they know, like, and trust you. And so, yeah, I think figuring that out and putting yourself out there in a way that's not uncomfortable. That's the other thing, is like, we really focus on getting people to not feel like they're being spammy or promotional or, like tooting their own horn. I hear this like on so many calls, like, I just don't want to toot my own horn. I want to flip it around. Let's say that you're an introvert and you say, I don't want to put myself on LinkedIn. I don't want to go to networking events. I don't want to do that stuff. Okay, cool. There's a position coming open. You're perfect for it. You are the ideal candidate for this role. There's 12 employees that would report to you. You can do the job. You have everything that you need, and you are right for that. Well, the hiring recruiter never sees you. They don't know who you are. So they hire this guy, this loudmouth, extroverted, outgoing, obnoxious guy he's a handful, but he'll do great. Now you have 12 people working for a jerk, right? And all that guy is going to do is throw his 12 people under the bus. So you have, by proxy, ruined the lives of 12 people that you could have served as a leader. And so, like, I actually find it selfish when people don't put themselves out there. Think of it this way. Here's another analogy for you. I've been out in the desert for 3 days. I stumble into some small, dusty town, and there's Renard standing there at the edge of the town, and he sees me. And he's got a flask of water on his hip. I would really love for Renard to let me know that he has a flask of water in that moment. So if you have a skill, a gift, a trade, the ability to lead, and you take care of the people who work for you and you take care of the organization, you need to let other people know that that's who you are and that's what you're capable of. Because if you don't, the people who are obnoxious but are not qualified, they will get the job. And now everything is worse because you didn't step up and make yourself available as the right product at the right time.
That's such a powerful message, Tom. And you reminded me of, something that I believe holds people back. So it's one thing to say you have the skill. So the words you and I have talked, or the ideas you and I have talked about, is extrinsic validation versus intrinsic validation. So if I know somebody's telling me that, hey, you should go apply for that job, I'll have the confidence, as an example. But if nobody tells me that, do I have enough internal validation within me to say, yes, I should be that person because I have this can of water that will be there? So could you talk a little bit about extrinsic and intrinsic validation and how it holds us back?
I struggled with this for most of my life and my career. There are lots of moments throughout my career that I fell apart because I didn't believe in myself. And there was a moment in my career where I didn't even like myself. And I think back on those very dark days, And I'd love to put my arm over that guy and, just talk to him, because like the reality is that a lot of us are only extrinsically validated, right? Like, um, the young kid who comes from the Indian subcontinent, and the only reason they're here in the United States is because they got good grades, right? And they raised their hand higher than everyone else in the room for long enough times to get into the United States, and they kept raising their hand as high as they could to get noticed, and to, like, they knew one trick. And you get to a point in your career where raising your hand doesn't do any good. And all of a sudden you start to realize, like, I don't know how to move forward anymore. I don't know what's wrong with me. It worked for 25 years of my life, and now it doesn't. Right. And you start to doubt yourself, and you start to wonder, like, I'm not from India, but I am from a very low income part of Baltimore City. And, like, I've eaten onion sandwiches and I've played stickball with tape, like, I don't want to go back there. And there were moments in my career where, like, I felt that, like, that voice, like, you're actually just that kid from, Baltimore City. You're just pretending to be who you are. The reality is that we let extrinsic validation be the only source of our confidence. It means you're outsourcing your confidence to everyone else around you, to what a spreadsheet says, what your bank account says, what someone says about you on the street. When you outsource your confidence will waver from very high to very low. And like in my first startup, I was very tied to the success of the business from day to day. And so I was almost mercurial, like very high, very low, depending on whether a check came in or a customer complained or whatever, right? After cancer, I realized that I don't care. And I think that, like, there's this thing, like, when you're 20 years old, you care very much about what everyone thinks about you. When you're 30, you are aware of what everybody thinks about you. When you're 40, you're not aware of what everyone thinks about you. When you're 50, you don't care what everyone thinks about you, right? And I think we learn over time that, like, this is who I am. This is what I believe in. These are my values, morals, and beliefs. And the more you can lean into that intrinsic understanding of yourself, the more you will make decisions based on your morals, values, and beliefs. And if they're true, and if they're good morals, values, and beliefs, you will do the very best that you can do. It may not be enough to meet the moment, but pretending like you have confidence you don't have, or pretending you have skills you don't have, right? Faking it until you make it, kind of thing, right? Yeah, that'll get you there for a minute or two, but that falls apart very fast when the first mistake or the first mask slip of that happens. And so, like, I try to enter into every situation with the mindset of, like, I may not be perfectly suited for this, but I'm going to do my best. And at the very least, I'll learn something. And so for people who struggle with confidence, I think I would say that probably the most important lesson that you'll learn by working with vertical motion, and the most important lesson that I learned from my cancer journey, is intrinsic confidence will solve a lot of problems in your life. If you believe in yourself and you love yourself, then when you have to make a hard call that hurts someone else, you'll make the call. If you are worried about what that person thinks about you because you base your entire identity on what they say about you in the break room, you might not make that call. And that's what's going to hold you back in your career. Right? I've made hard calls this year. Amir, you just made a hard call yourself. And like, these are real things that you face in leadership. And if you don't have the intrinsic confidence and the belief in yourself that I'm as good as I can be and I'm trying to get better, then you might not make those calls, and that you might not be cut out for leadership.
I'm kind of curious. Have you ever had anybody in the program and said, just like you said, they might not be ready for leadership? Have you ever had anybody in the program and said, this might not be the journey for you to try to get to leadership?
Yes.
Mm.
I can think of one individual in particular, and she was she became a training for our discovery coaches. So I don't take all of the calls. I have other coaches who help me vet people to come into the program. And one of our discovery coaches let this person in. And within a month, I realized this, she was already below what we typically accept in terms of like, I want someone who's got 10 years of experience. They're already at least a mid manager. They have management experience. She didn't really qualify for all that, but she was in there. I worked with her for a year. I did a lot of one-on-one. I actually took a one-on-one call with her on Christmas Day. And she absorbed the entire program, went through every single training there was to go through, including the entire vault, which is like, I don't know, about 300 hours of content. She absorbed all of it, but she was an information gatherer. She did actually get promoted. And so she did make more money. It was like a 25% pay increase. And she's at a higher level. But she never changed. She never changed her mindset. Very fixed mindset. Very it's everyone else's fault mindset. And one day I just told her like, hey, look, this is just not going to work for you. And we parted ways. And I think about her a lot because I failed her by letting her in the program. I failed her by because she just wasn't ready for what we teach. She had other work to do before she needed to go to do a bunch of therapy work. And coaching is therapy adjacent, but we're not therapists. And there was a lot of things that we weren't qualified to help her with. And so, yeah, it does happen. That has become a teaching moment for our discovery coaches. And we think very carefully about who we allow into the community now because of that.
Even speaking about the program now, you have graduated a group of us to executive coaches in the program. What made you say, "Hey, there's some great people in here that I feel can become coaches"? How did that all start? Now you have what, we're about 5 or 6 of us, if I'm correct. But how did that all start?
It was I could have had a V8 moment. It was like, oh man, what an idea. Why did I think of this sooner? At the end of the day, the best person to teach something is someone who's gone through it. And so I was looking for, coaches who had executive experience and this and that and the other. And I'm like, heck, I need you to read the course. I need you to learn and absorb all this material so that you know the right words. Why not just choose the people who actually did it and ask them, if you have the time and bandwidth, I'd love for you to be the one. And I got to tell you, it actually works great when I tell people that I'm talking to about the program, like, your coach will actually be somebody who went through this program themselves and got the success that you're looking for, right? Like, it's a very powerful message on the front end, but then on the back end, as you've already seen yourself, Renard, as one of those first five client now coaches, um, you already know where you see someone show up where you were 12 months ago, right? You see someone like Ralph in our community and you're like, I can help this young man. I know what he needs because I needed it. And you become the teacher of the lesson that you just yourself learned. And coaching is that. It's basically, I've walked down this block, this scary block in the city, 1,000 times. And now here's this new person who's afraid to walk down that block. I take them by the hand and walk them down the block, right? That's what coaching really is.
Um, I got a little teary just hearing that, and the reason that is, and you brought up a couple of people that I've had conversations with, and I tell a lot of people in the group that I talk about the wins that I've had this year so they understand I was there where they are. Where they're starting, I was there. I always bring up I was the guy in the hoodie. I started off this program as the guy in the hoodie. And it's just to say they will be able to go to that path. The person they're trying to be is already down the road. You're just trying to get to that person. So this program is the blocks to get you to that person that you want to be. And it's definitely an honor to be one of the executive coaches. The group that we have are all great. If I was an executive coach, I'd be happy if they were one of my executive coaches. That's how I know they're great people. So it is definitely an honor and very humbling to be an executive coach in vertical motion.
And I'm
Well, I will
super proud
tell
of you,
you,
Renard.
yes, yes, we are. And I will tell you that Ryan, who's our head of operations, and I were literally talking about you about 3 hours ago. And you don't know this yet, but we're going to ask you to lead the executive presence calls going forward if you're interested.
I am interested. I am definitely interested. Man, I appreciate that. I'm definitely interested. That was one thing that I honed in so much was that executive presence. I tell people executive presence turned into executive swagger for me. It's something that I carry with me on a regular basis. It's the book I'm writing is based around it, but it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for this program. It was something that I needed to understand and more in it just changes the way I'm around work. I have it in a suit I have when it's everywhere with me. So 100% yes, I will say that on this podcast. Yes, I will be more than happy to. It's definitely an honor. I see Ryan do them all the time. I even told him before. I said, "Thank you for letting me speak on these." He's like, "Man, you earned your seat at the table." He said, "You're more than welcome." So 100%, I appreciate that.
We want to make, you need to write that book. You need to get that done because we want
Oh,
to make that part of the curriculum. And because you took it you took to heart some, there's we teach only so much because we don't want to overwhelm people with things. It's up to the individual to decide to dive in all the way, right? And you did. You went 2 miles deep into executive presence, and now you've created your own concept of it, executive swagger, which I love. That I love audacity in people, and that feels audacious, right? Executive swagger. It's one step above just core confidence. It's like I'm here to do something big. Let's go. Lead, follow, get out of my way, pick your one, pick which one you want, right? Like, and that energy is it's the kind of thing that attracts people to want to do things with you and for you, right? And you have it in spades. And so, like, of course you're the perfect person to teach it now.
I appreciate it. For me, executive swagger became like my Superman cape. That's what it became for me. It switched me into this different person. When I put on, when I get ready for maybe a presentation, etc. They always ask me like, "Why are you so calm?" I was like, "It's the swagger. I've been here before. I'm good. I've been here before, and it just works. It became this cape, and now it just became something that's with me every single day. Even my wife. My wife knew me when I was a big introvert. When I was quiet, I didn't speak, and she was like, You're a totally different person because of this program." So, yeah, in the book, it will be written. I am writing it right now. That is happening. I keep telling everybody I'm looking forward to getting it out there and being published. And it was something I did not think I ever wanted to do was write a book. I never thought of that before. It was something I never thought, and I was like, it was funny. Ryan was like, "Man, you should copyright that." So I copyrighted it, and he was like, "Man, you should write a book." I was like, "Maybe I should write a book." I talked to my wife, and she was like, "You should write a book on that." I was like, "Man, you are a genius." So you're a genius, and that started after that. So definitely looking forward to getting that out. But I owe that to you in this program. I definitely do.
Thank you. Are you familiar with the story of Bo Jackson and his alter ego?
No, I didn't know he had alter ego.
Yeah. So when Bo Jackson, was just, off the field, whichever field he was on, baseball or football, when he was off the field, he was just Bo, right? Just, kind of a kind hearted, happy go lucky dude, just friendly, gregarious. But when he stepped on the field, he said when his foot stepped on that white line, specifically on the NFL field, he said he could feel around him the sound go away, all the lights turn red, and now he's 34. And so when he's on the gridiron, he's 34, and he's there to do a job, and it's to get to the end zone. And then as soon as he steps off the line, he's back to Bo. Leadership is a persona. Like, we have different personas. The way you act around, a friend's baby is different than the way you act at a grocery store, is different than the way you act at a football game, is different than the way you act at your job, right? And executive swagger, executive presence is just a persona that we wear when we want to be seen as a leader, right? And so it's not a mask. It's not pretending to be something you're not. It's just a version of yourself. And like, so you explain that so clearly, Renard. And like, I love the idea of it just being like a coat you wear when you have the time.
You're right. You're right. That's what I tell anybody. Everybody kept asking. I say the simplest form is I say when you put on that great suit, that suit you feel good. You go. You put that jacket on, that's that swagger. You feel like it just turned on. You're ready to step into that room with a bunch of other lions and just own your space in that room. And that's what it became. And I feel it on a regular basis. I tell Amir, you got swagger. He had something great going on. I said, man, you're gonna have executive swagger that day. So definitely. So I appreciate.
Well, I couldn't be more proud of you, Renard.
I
Really,
appreciate
truly
that.
mean that.
I appreciate.
Really excited for you as an executive coach, and really excited for you to take over that executive presence meetup.
Man, hey, I'm proud of you, Amir. I'm proud of you. If people do not know, and we talked about it. Me and Amir, of course, met in vertical motion, but we started this podcast. We didn't meet each other till almost like 6, 7 months in person. We filmed, record, started a podcast. We didn't meet each other till in person. And Amir is one of my best friends, and that's all because of this community and meeting each other. We would have never met each other. We technically are 4 hours away from each other. We probably would have never met each other no matter where we could have walked past each other, would have never stopped, but it's because of this community. So, again, Tom, what you have done with vertical motion, the last question I have to ask you is, where do you see it's 3 years now. What do you see for vertical motion in the next 5 years?
Thought a lot about that. And one of my goals is to make vertical motion bigger than me. So I'm the face of the brand because I created. I'm the founder. I'm the light that everyone wants to be closer to. But I'm not the best coach here. There are people who are better coaches at different things than me. And there's more than just me here. There's a community. I'm just the face of it. And so one of the things that I think a lot about is how do I make the community the face of it, right? Like, how do I make vertical motion be more than just Tom's company, right? So that's something that I think a lot about. And the other thing that I think a lot about is the world has changed so much, especially this year, and will change over the next 2 or 3 years. There's two things that I want to focus on going forward. We're going to continue to do everything we do with teaching people to go from director to vice president and similar growth. But I want to start working with people who are tired of the corporate grind and they want to get out of it altogether. And they want to go build a company because they're sick and tired of, working for cultures that makes them feel sick to their stomach, that put them in ethical dilemmas constantly. Go build your own organization based on your morals, values, and beliefs, and build an ethical organization. I want to start working with people like that as kind of a new project. And I think the other thing is um, we are going away from AI in terms of how we market and present ourselves, right? So everything that you see from Vertical Motion will be authentically done by a human. It will be authentically written by a human. I will use AI to help me brainstorm and collaborate and create, the bullet points for the things that I want to teach, because it's like a super powerful search engine with context. But I don't want to put AI images of myself out there and AI generated videos. And I think we've already left the attention economy and we're moving into the trust economy now. And I think trust is so important. The people who spend 2026 building a trustworthy, authentic brand like the two of you are doing, those are the people that are going to be very successful towards the end of the decade.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
So I have to ask the question we ask everybody, Tom, and it's always, what's your theme music? So what's the music you listen to getting ready for one of our executive edge calls, any of the other calls? What gets you ready for the day?
So I generally use brain.fm, which is a just like background music with binaural beats that puts your mind in the right state of mind. So that and like just bland, chill music is kind of what I listen to. I'm also a big fan of Diwali and Indian music. I love Bollywood. So I listen to that stuff. But my theme song, my walk up music is Staying Alive,
Mhm.
and by the Bee Gees. And it's staying alive. It's been staying alive for a long time, but then it actually took on additional meaning in 2022 during cancer. And now now it's become like that's my walk up music, right? Because there's swagger, there's energy, there's that, there's that, whatever it is, that je ne sais quoi, right? That there's that energy that John Travolta has when he's walking onto the stage, right? And I admire that and I like that. And that song always pumps me up, and it's really hard to not just break out on a dance floor and cut it.
I love that. I love that. That's the way to end the podcast. Tom, we have to thank you again for taking the time to finish off our season 1. Like we said, we had to have you on, our executive coach. We appreciate you. You are more than our executive coach. You are a great friend as well. And to our black belts and boardrooms audience, we will see you on the next one.